Hey, what's up guys? Trevor James here, bringing you another deck profile. A while back, I showed you guys my Amorphage deck, and that was more of just like a standard version of the deck that's just really fun but not very competitive at all. I know I've been seeing a bunch of comments where I said at the end of the video I would be showing you guys my more competitive version, and people have been asking me to show my competitive version. And since then, I kind of took it apart because I was feeling like it really wasn't too competitive. It was more fun, but kind of chaotic. And recently I've been playtesting it more, and it's still really fun to me. It's actually still pretty competitive. It's done pretty well against actually a lot of main decks in the meta, at least on DevPro. In real life, it hasn't done too well for me. I mean, it's done okay. But anyway, guys, I'm going to stop rambling and go ahead and show you guys. This is my competitive Amorphage deck. And those of you that know rogue decks, and the reason that makes them competitive is obviously one specific card in this deck, which I'll go ahead and show you guys in a minute. So let's go ahead and get to this deck. For the monsters, I really only run, I think, like 14, and if this card wasn't in this deck, my deck would be kind of screwed, and that is Magical Abductor. This card is absolutely fantastic because this card literally lets me search out any of my Amorphages, because Amorphages literally act as scales that basically are huge floodgates on your opponent, and with this card, she basically lets me search out my floodgate. She's a one-card floodgate, basically, which is really, really good. Definitely makes this deck more competitive and a lot more consistent. Next up, I have Amorphage Gluttony. This card literally hurts so many decks, it's not even funny, because while this card and another Amorphage card are on the field, in my scale, he literally makes it so that no effects can be activated in terms of monster effects. So it hurts so many decks, it's so funny, and it's really hard for people to get over it when I have all these cards to protect it. So it's that card I put down in the scale. I'm like, okay, dude, get over that. And then next up, I have Amorphage Pride and 2 Amorphage Wrath. These guys are my beaters. I barely put them in the scale. They're more just beaters, and in general, they're very good for that. I already explained in my other video what all these cards do, so if you guys watch that video, I'm kind of just going to show you guys the reasons why I play these cards in this version instead. Next up, I play 1 Greed and 1 Lechery, you know, the one that stops spells and the one that stops traps. I do run a lot of spells in this deck, so I will never run Lechery at more than 1 in this deck because I need those spells to be able to be played. And then for the last 3 monsters, I run 2 Amorphage Goliath because a walking Macrocosmos is amazing. I don't know why that wouldn't be amazing. And then 1 Amorphage Sloth because if I want my opponent to actually not be able to search through their deck for a card they need, that's why this card's really good. That's it for my Amorphage monsters. Let's get to the spells. So I have 3 Card of Demise, because if you guys didn't hear what I said about rogues, Card of Demise is the main card that makes all these rogue decks so competitive. It literally lets me get to all my combo pieces and just basically wipe my opponent's board with just crazy effects. Next up, I have 3 Pot of Duality, or lock down my opponent's board, not really wipe. I have 3 Pot of Duality because if I'm going to have Card of Demise, I have to have Pot of Duality. They go hand in hand because I need that consistency to be able to search for the cards I need. Next up, I have 3 Amorphage Infection because you can't run this deck without this card. This card basically makes it so that for every single Amorphage monster on my field or Amorphage card on my field, all my Amorphages gain 100 attack for each one. It's just really good for that. And then, of course, it has a searching ability. And then I kind of went through the Amorphage spells and stuff, and actually I'm not running Amorphous Persona anymore. Instead, I'm running this, Void Expansion. This card basically is a scapegoat for me, and I really need that because I need to be able to have monsters to sacrifice every turn to keep my Amorphages intact, because the people who don't know what Amorphages do, if I don't have a monster to sacrifice, I can't keep their effect inactive and they just die. So Void Expansions let me put 1 on the field every turn. It's really good for that. It's pretty consistent, and then, you know, to get to my Void Expansion, I have 1 Terraforming as well. Next up, I have 3 Scapegoats. I know people will probably say this is a little bit weird, but with 3 Scapegoats, it really lets me not only stall my opponent, if I have a terrible hand, getting 4 monsters on my field in general is really just kind of protective for me, and then of course they're used as sacrifices for my other effects to keep my Amorphages intact. So 3 Scapegoat works really well for me. I know it seems a little bit cloggy, but it's actually really good. And then this card is absolutely busted in this deck. Mage Power. Mage Power basically makes it so that for every spell card on my field that I equip it to a monster, my monster gains 500 attack for each spell card on the field. So my monster gets absolutely busted with attack, and Amorphages can literally get to like 5,000, 6,000 attack with this card and my my other Amorphage cards. And then I'm still running more spells, so I have 2 Pot of Riches. I run a Pendulum deck, so I really need to have this card because this card lets me recycle my Amorphages back into my deck, allows me to recycle their effects back into the deck, so when I can get to them again, I can search for them. It's really, really good for that, so I get the consistency back in my deck if I'm somehow really losing and I need to get that out. And then I run 1 Stormforth because I do run some high-level monsters in this deck, and if I do want to summon out, let's say, Goliath or something, I can go Stormforth, sack one of mine, sack one of my opponents, or I can go Sloth and basically make it so that I have a heavy beater on the field, and I can also protect my other Amorphages, so it's really good for that. And then Upstart Goblin. Because, you know, a 39 card deck is just great. And then 1 MST, if I need it, it's there for me. Especially if I need to pop my scales and I have no way of getting rid of my scale, just in case. And then that's it for the spells. I have 3 traps, so I have 2 Amorphage Lysis. This card I used to not really care about, but it's actually really, really good. Because, I mean, yeah, it gives my opponent basically 100 less for each one of their monsters on the field for each Amorphage, so it drops their monsters by like 500, 600 attacks sometimes, so that's decent. But the main effect is if a card in my Pendulum Scale is popped and destroyed once per turn, I can replace it with another Amorphage card from my deck. So it's an instant replacement. It's really, really good for that, and I'm going to run it at 2. And then the last card is Pendulum Reborn, because Pendulum Reborn is basically a monster reborn for Pendulum cards. It allows me to get out Goliath if he somehow gets popped. And it's just in general a really good card. So yeah, guys, that's basically my deck. I hope you guys like that. Like I said, it's not exactly super competitive, but it's more competitive than the standard version. It's way more consistent with Pot of Duality and Card of Demise. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye!